You earned a free personal pan pizza in Pizza Hut because you read a book. And that might be the single greatest trade deal in the history of your childhood. But that Pizza Hut, the one with the booth and the lamp and the pitcher of Pepsi so heavy you needed both hands, that was only one piece of a much bigger story. Because between roughly 1965 and 1995, an entire empire of food chains rose up around you. Some of them changed how every restaurant in America works today. And most of them are gone. Name's Frank, and I've gone through hundreds of old menus, franchise records, news archives, and, honestly, way too many Facebook comment sections from people who really miss their loaded potato skins. So here's what you're getting today. A chain-by-chain breakdown of the food empires that shaped your after-school dinners, your birthday parties, your Little League celebrations, and your road trips. Who built them, what made them special, why they fell apart, and the stuff most people never talk about. You ready? Good. Because first, you need to know about the restaurant that invented the kids' meal. And no, it was not McDonald's. Burger Chef opened in 1954 in Indianapolis as a straight-up rival to McDonald's. Same deal. Burgers, fries, speed. And for a while, it worked. By the early 1970s, Burger Chef had over 1,000 locations across the country. 1,000. That's more than McDonald's had at the time. And then, in 1973, somebody at Burger Chef had an idea. What if you put a burger, fries, a drink, a dessert, and a little toy together in one box, and aimed it straight at kids? They called it the Fun Meal. Cardboard box, cartoon mascots on the outside, a small toy inside. Sound familiar? 6 years later, in 1979, McDonald's rolled out the Happy Meal. Same idea. Box, toy, kids go nuts. Burger Chef actually sued McDonald's over it. They lost, and that loss stung, because Burger Chef was already in trouble. The chain had grown too fast, the quality dropped, and in 1982, General Foods sold the whole thing to Hardee's. Hardee's turned every single Burger Chef into a Hardee's. Gone. So if you ever wondered where the Happy Meal came from, you got your answer. A dead restaurant gave McDonald's its most famous idea and didn't even get a thank you card. Now, Burger Chef was fast food, but during that same time period, something totally different was happening with sit-down dining. And it started with one guy in Dallas who had a wild idea about salad. In 1966, a man named Norman Brinker opened a restaurant called Steak and Ale in Dallas, Texas. The idea was simple, but at the time, kind of radical. What if you could get a real steak dinner, white tablecloth feeling, dim lights, the whole mood, but at a price a regular family could actually afford? Nobody was doing that. You either went to a fancy steakhouse and spent a fortune, or you went to a diner. There was nothing in between. Brinker built the in-between. And then he did something else. He put a salad bar in the restaurant. Now you hear salad bar and you think, yeah, sure, every buffet has one. In 1966, restaurants did not have salad bars. Norman Brinker is the reason they started. Steak and Ale grew to about 280 locations by the 1980s. Brinker sold it to Pillsbury for $100 million in 1976. And this is where the story branches off. Because with that Pillsbury money and clout behind him, Brinker went on to help start Bennigan's, and then Chili's, and then the company that runs them all, Brinker International. So that one Darkwood steakhouse in Dallas basically gave birth to casual dining as you know it. Every time you sit down at a Chili's, that bloodline goes back to Steak and Ale. Which is a good time to talk about Bennigan's, because that place had one sandwich that people are still arguing about online. Bennigan's launched in 1976 as one of the first casual dining chains in the country. Irish pub vibe, American comfort food, cold beer, and booths you could sink into after a long day. And it blew up. By the late 80s and early 90s, Bennigan's was everywhere. But the thing people remember most? The Monte Cristo sandwich. A deep-fried sandwich made with ham, turkey, Swiss, and American cheese on honey wheat bread, coated in powdered sugar, and served with raspberry jam for dipping. It sounds like someone made a bet in the kitchen, and the bet won. Bennigan's added the Monte Cristo to the menu in the early 80s, and it became their signature. People still make copycat recipes of that thing today. But the chain itself hit trouble. In 2008, the parent company filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and most locations shut down overnight. Some franchise locations held on, though. And as of right now, Bennigan's is actually trying to come back. Whether it'll work, that's a different conversation. But that sandwich earned its place in the history books. Now, while Bennigan's was busy being the place for adults, a completely different kind of food chain was being built for you, the kid version of you. And it had robots. In 1980, March 3rd, actually, a place called ShowBiz Pizza Place opened in Kansas City, Missouri. And it was built on one idea: pizza, arcade games, and an animatronic band called the Rockafire Explosion. These were full-sized mechanical animals playing instruments on a stage. A bear, a gorilla, a bird, a mouse, the whole lineup. They moved, they sang, they blinked. And depending on how old you were when you first saw them, they were either the coolest thing you'd ever seen or absolutely terrifying. Now, here's where it gets interesting. ShowBiz Pizza existed at the exact same time as Chuck E. Cheese. Same concept. Pizza, arcade, robot show. Two chains, same idea, direct competitors. And for a few years, they fought it out. But in 1984, Chuck E. Cheese's parent company went bankrupt, and ShowBiz swooped in and bought them. The merger was completed in 1985. But then, something strange happened. Even though ShowBiz bought Chuck E. Cheese, the Chuck E. Cheese name was more famous. So between 1991 and 1993, every ShowBiz Pizza location had its Rockafire Explosion ripped out and replaced with Chuck E. Cheese characters. The whole identity gone. The company that won the war lost its own face. If you were a ShowBiz kid, your place didn't close. It just became something else while you were still growing up. And that hit different. But ShowBiz wasn't the only pizza chain writing your childhood. There was another one, older, louder, and the place your team went after every single game. Shakey's Pizza was founded in 1954 in Sacramento, California, by a guy named Sherwood Johnson. His nickname was Shakey because of a nerve condition that made his hands shake. And he opened the very first pizza chain franchise in America. Not Pizza Hut, not Domino's, Shakey's. By the 1970s, Shakey's had over 500 locations worldwide. And their thing was this: long rows of picnic tables, a player piano going in the background, old Keystone Cops reels playing on a screen, and pitchers of beer for the parents. Their actual advertising motto was, and this is real, "We serve fun at Shakey's. Also pizza." Also pizza. Like the pizza was an afterthought. But if you played youth sports, Shakey's was the place. Your coach would say, "Shakey's" after the game, and suddenly you were playing like your life depended on it. The Bunch of Lunch Buffet. All you can eat pizza, fried chicken, mojo potatoes, and garlic bread for the price of basically nothing. Today, there are only about 47 Shakey's left in the United States, most of them in California. But every Saturday morning game you played, that wasn't about the trophy. That was about the Shakey's trip after. Now, while Shakey's owned youth sports, another kind of food chain was conquering a different territory entirely. And that territory was the highway. If your family took road trips in the 70s or early 80s, you know, the Orange Roof, Howard Johnson's. It was the biggest restaurant chain in America during the 1960s and 70s, bigger than McDonald's. And their thing was ice cream. 28 flavors. 28 might not sound like a lot now, but in that era, that was like walking into a palace. You'd spot that orange roof from the back seat of your parents' station wagon, and it meant rest, food, and ice cream. That was the whole deal. Fried clam strips and 28 flavors. But Howard Johnson's made a mistake. When the interstate highway system expanded, fast food chains like McDonald's started planting themselves at every exit. They were cheaper, quicker, and more aggressive. Howard Johnson's, which ran more like a full-service restaurant, couldn't keep up with that speed. By the 1980s, locations started closing. By the 2000s, almost all of them were gone. The very last Howard Johnson's restaurant closed in 2022. But before it disappeared, there was another chain filling that same road trip space on the East Coast. Roy Rogers. Roy Rogers was started by the Marriott Corporation in 1968 in Falls Church, Virginia, named after the cowboy actor himself. Roast beef, fried chicken, burgers, the big three. But the move that made Roy Rogers different from every other fast food chain was the Fixins bar. The Fixins bar showed up in the mid-1970s, and the idea was simple. You buy your sandwich, then you walk over to this big self-serve bar and stack it with whatever you want. Lettuce, tomatoes, pickles, onions, cheese sauce, hot peppers. It was your sandwich now. You built it. Nobody told you how much lettuce was appropriate. There were no lettuce rules. By 1990, Roy Rogers had 648 locations. Then Marriott sold the chain to the parent company of Hardee's. And just like Burger Chef, Hardee's converted most of them. Hundreds of Roy Rogers turned into Hardee's almost overnight. Hardee's had a real talent for showing up and eating other chains. Roy Rogers eventually got its trademark back in 2002, and it's slowly coming back with a few dozen locations on the East Coast. But if you remember the Fixins bar in the 80s, you remember the feeling. That was your sandwich. Now, we talked about road trip chains. We talked about pizza for the kids. But there's an entire world of food chains from the Gen X era that lived and died by one concept: the buffet. Ponderosa Steakhouse peaked at nearly 700 locations by the late 1980s. Its rival, Bonanza Steakhouse, had close to 600. Same idea: order a steak, get access to the buffet. Salad bar, hot food, baked potatoes, soft serve ice cream machine at the end. And the beauty of Ponderosa and Bonanza was the value. A family of 4 could walk in, everybody eats, nobody argues about what to order, and you walk out spending less than you would at a sit-down restaurant. For families on a budget, those buffets were a lifeline. And for kids, the buffet was basically a strategy game. Plate 1, obligation. Plate 2, what you actually wanted. Plate 3, soft serve. In 1989, Ponderosa and Bonanza, who had been fighting each other for decades, were bought by the same company and merged. Which sounds like it should have made them stronger, but it didn't. Changing tastes, rising beef prices, and newer competition ate away at them through the 90s and 2000s. Today, about 12 Ponderosa locations and 3 Bonanzas are left in the entire country. Then there was Sizzler. Opened in 1958 in Culver City, California. A steak you can't afford to miss. Sizzler's secret weapon was the cheese toast, a thick slab of sourdough covered in melted cheese that came to your table hot. People went to Sizzler for that toast the way people go to Red Lobster for the biscuits. And then you hit the salad bar, which, calling it a salad bar was generous, because there was pasta salad, fried chicken wings, soup, taco fixings, muffins. It was a whole second restaurant hiding inside the first one. At its peak, Sizzler had somewhere between 270 and 700 locations, depending on which source you ask. Bankruptcy in 1996 shrunk it down hard. But some locations are still out there, mostly in California, and they're trying to make a comeback. And then there was Ground Round. This one's different. Ground Round was actually created by Howard Johnson's in 1969. Their gimmick? Peanuts on the table, and you were encouraged to throw the shells on the floor. Imagine telling a kid, here's a bucket of peanuts. Eat them. Throw the shells wherever you want. That's not a restaurant. That's a dream. They also had a mascot named Bingo the Clown. They played old silent movies and cartoons on a big screen. And on Tuesdays, kids ate for a penny per pound of their body weight. A penny per pound. So your 50-pound kid costs you 50 cents for dinner. That's not a meal deal. That's borderline charity. Ground Round had over 200 locations at its height, went through bankruptcy, and mostly disappeared. But in 2025, they announced a nostalgia-powered comeback. Whether those peanut shells hit the floor again, we'll see. All right, we've covered fast food, casual dining, pizza, buffets, and road trip stops. But there are a few more chains from this era that need their moment, and each one of them tells a slightly different story about how the food world was changing around you. Chi-Chi's was founded in 1975 in Minnesota by a man named Marno McDermott. And here's a fact for you. Green Bay Packers player Max McGee, an NFL player, co-founded a Mexican restaurant chain in Minnesota. And somehow, it worked beautifully. Chi-Chi's peaked at about 200 locations, and for a lot of families, especially in the Midwest, it was their first introduction to Mexican food. Not authentic Mexican food, exactly, but the sizzling fajitas, the crunchy taco platters, the fried ice cream, the birthday sombrero. You know the sombrero. You sat there while the entire staff gathered around, clapped, and made you the center of the room, whether you wanted it or not. But Chi-Chi's story has a rough chapter. In October 2003, a single location in Beaver Valley Mall, Pennsylvania, served contaminated green onions from Mexico. It caused the largest hepatitis A outbreak in American history. Over 660 people got sick. 4 people died. The chain had already filed for bankruptcy that same month. The outbreak finished it. By 2004, every Chi-Chi's restaurant in the U.S. was closed. But Marna McDermott's son, Michael, has announced plans to bring Chi-Chi's back. The name is still on salsa and tortilla packages in grocery stores. The brand survived, even if the restaurants didn't. Now here's one that had maybe the strangest path of any chain on this list. In 1991, country music legend Kenny Rogers teamed up with a former KFC executive to open a rotisserie chicken chain. Kenny Rogers Roasters. The chicken was good, actually really good. Rotisserie, wood-fired roasted with corn muffins and decent sides. People walked in for a quick bite and walked out impressed. Then Seinfeld made it famous. In 1996, there was a whole episode, The Chicken Roaster, where a Kenny Rogers Roasters opens across from Jerry and Kramer's apartment, and Kramer gets addicted to the chicken while the giant red sign keeps Jerry awake. That episode actually boosted the chain's name recognition. But it wasn't enough. The chain struggled financially and disappeared from the US by the early 2000s. Plot twist though, Kenny Rogers Roasters is still alive and doing well in Asia. Malaysia, the Philippines, Indonesia. The chicken that America forgot is thriving on the other side of the world. Your rotisserie chicken moved abroad and got a better life. And finally, Friendly's. If you grew up anywhere on the East Coast or in New England, you know this one. Friendly's started in 1935 in Springfield, Massachusetts. 2 18-year-old brothers, Presley and Curtis Blake, opened an ice cream shop during the Great Depression. The name was a promise. This would be a friendly place. By the 1970s and 80s, Friendly's had expanded into a full restaurant chain. Burgers, melts, grilled cheese, club sandwiches. But the real draw was always dessert. The Fribble. A milkshake so thick you had to wait for it. You'd suck on that straw with everything you had, and nothing would move for the first 10 seconds. It was a battle of patience. And the clown face sundae for kids, 2 scoops for eyes, a cone hat, whipped cream hair? That wasn't a dessert. That was a reward for surviving the week. Friendly's went through tough times. Bankruptcies, closures, ownership changes. But some locations are still out there. And if you walk into one, it still smells the same. Here's the thing about all of these chains. Burger Chef, Steak and Ale, Bennigan's, ShowBiz Pizza, Shakey's, Howard Johnson's, Roy Rogers, Ponderosa, Bonanza, Sizzler, Ground Round, Chi-Chi's, Kenny Rogers Roasters, Friendly's. They weren't just restaurants. They were proof that somebody, somewhere, believed they could take a simple idea, a better steak, a cheaper pizza, chicken on a rotisserie, a salad bar, peanut shells on the floor, and build something that brought people together. Some of them made it. Most of them didn't. A few of them handed their best ideas to somebody else who got all the credit. Looking at you, McDonald's. But every one of these places left a mark on how you eat, where you eat, and what you expect when you sit down at a table. The kid who opened that Burger Chef Fun Meal box in 1973 didn't know they were holding the blueprint for a billion-dollar idea. They just knew there was a toy inside. And honestly, that was enough. What food chain was your favorite? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, hit the like and subscribe button below, and check out this video next. I think you'll love it. See you there.